So welcome everyone to the webinar titled Investing in Integrated Services to Prevent and Respond to Violence Against Children. Before we actually get started with the webinar itself, I'd like to just go through a few technical details regarding this webinar and the Zoom event as a whole. So in terms of the first technical aspects, obviously for participants, your cameras and microphones are disabled for the sake of the webinar. However, you should be able to see a chat or a Q&A button on the bottom right of your Zoom screen. So if you have any questions for the panelists and for any of the people speaking, feel free to write them down in the Q&A chat box. And there will be a section at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. If you require interpretation, the same thing is applied. So there is the option. So oops, apologies. Interpretation will be available in Arabic, French, Japanese, and Portuguese, as well as American Sign Language. So you will have the options available throughout the entirety of the event. So just click on the interpretation globe logo on the lower part of your screen and select the language in which you prefer, should interpretation be necessary for you. And as said previously, there will be sign interpretation all throughout the event, and this particular person will be spotlighted as well. Finally, in regards to our child safeguarding protocols, we aim to ensure a safe and exclusive space for children and young people, regardless of format. So as you can see, today's speakers who are under 18 years of age are only identified with their first name. And that also means for anyone within the audience under the age of 18, we ask you not to include your full name per our child protocols, and we invite you to only use your first name. And if there are any remaining questions regarding child safeguarding and our protocols in general, please feel free to send a message to the child safeguarding focal point, who should have their camera on as we speak. That is all, and thank you so much.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, distinguished panelists, children, government representatives, colleagues from UN agencies and civil society organizations, and all individuals joining us today. My name is Maria Lucia Uribe, Executive Director of Arigato International Geneva and co-convener of the Working Group on Children and Violence of Child Rights Connect, together with World Vision International. On behalf of the organizers, I give you a very warm welcome to this panel discussion on investing on integrated services to prevent and respond to violence against children, co-organized by the Office of the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children and the Working Group on Children and Violence of Child Rights Connect, on the margins of the 49th session of the Human Rights Council. Child Rights Connect is a non-profit network of more than 85 national, regional, and international organizations, ensuring that all children can fully enjoy their rights as defined by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Working Group on Children and Violence brings together 70 society organizations doing advocacy on child rights and human rights and working to end violence against children. We aim to promote action that will prompt violence prevention strategies and protect children, addressing the root causes of violence. In particular, we work towards implementation of the CRC as a legal obligation for government and as a core protection tool for children. Through our work, we advocate for better financing and investment on ending violence against children, as well as promoting the importance of children's participation to contribute to end violence against girls and boys. This event is part of our commitment to contribute to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in particular, the violence against children-related goals and targets, by bringing together different stakeholders in dialogue, enhancing the visibility and prioritization of violence against children in the work of the human rights mechanisms, as well as promoting good practices and recommendations on what works to end violence against children that can help us influence the much needed change and action at the national and global levels. We strongly support the work of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, as well as the mandate of the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children. It is our hope that this event can help us strengthen our commitments and collaborations at different levels to end violence against children. Again, many thanks for joining us today. And without further ado, let me welcome Mrs. Najat Malam Mejid, Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, who will be moderating this panel. Najat, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria Lucia. I am really happy to be here with you, with many friends, and the most important, the children and the young people. Some of them I already met, and I am really happy to see you here on board. I am happy also to see all my colleagues of NGOs, and I want to use this opportunity to thank you warmly, and maybe Arigato International, World Vision, and Child Rights Connect for their support in co-hosting this event. I am really happy to moderate this session, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of things, but just to highlight that violence against children is increasing, and less visible. Not only due to the pandemic, it was existing before, it has been exacerbated by the pandemic, and it is exacerbated by the ongoing humanitarian crisis, wars, conflicts, climate change, and the most recent one, Ukraine. But we can make an end to violence against children because we know what to do, how to do it, and we need really to put an end to invest in cross-sectoral integrated services that are child and gender sensitive and inclusive, accessible to all children independently of their status. And this is what was the purpose of my report this year that I submitted past Tuesday. And I am really happy to reiterate it again and to use this event to have better understanding and also to discuss together how we can move forward really to make sure that we are investing in children. Today's events will allow us to consider the issue from various perspectives. In the first part, that will be short of the event, we will set the scene and will frame the discussion. In the second part, we will hear about the representative of member states that I am really happy to have you on board because we are working closely together since many times, who are already doing, these integrated services that share the high return on investment, on investing in integrated services, and others who are planning to do it. In the third section, we will focus on how to advocate and support member states in undertaking this work, including through the involvement of children and young people that we have on board this today. And we will then have what I am sure an interactive, truly interactive debate, through a Q&A and giving participants to the opportunity to express, to share, to ask questions. And I will now invite Dana, my friend from World Vision International, to share key messages from forthcoming advocacy brief. Preventing violence against children makes economic sense, which is being developed as a collaboration between my mandate, Unicef, World Vision, Child Fund Alliance, Plan International, and Save the Children International. Dana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Najat. Good morning, good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As Najat was mentioning, we are living unprecedented times and probably the most challenging crisis that humanity faced in the past 50 years. The outbreak of a global pandemic increased impact on the climate change and the exacerbation of conflict, with the most recent one in Ukraine, have touched every corner of the world and unfortunately almost every child. And as the pandemic and conflict continue, the world's attention on protecting its children from violence is decreasing, as Najat was mentioning. Yet we know that there is a silent and hidden pandemic of violence against children that is on the rise. And my colleagues on the field are seeing this every day. The COVID context showed us just how weak the systems to prevent and protect our children from violence can be in the wake of a growing need. And the unfolding crisis in Ukraine and the struggle of the neighboring countries to provide assistance to the unaccompanied and at-risk children is a sobering reminder of the costs that we pay for the years of underinvestment in child protection. Our meeting today is both important and very timely. We need to explore and agree on what are better solutions to protect children from violence by ensuring timely and effective investments in services and in programs that can truly make a difference. And for the past 5 years, World Vision worked alongside many partners present here, the Office of Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, Unicef, Save the Children, Child Fund, Plan International, the Global Partnership, and I'm sure many other organizations that are working at the national level to develop an investment case to end violence against children. So today I'm honored to share some important insights from this work with you. The first one is that, as we know, violence against children has a huge personal toll on the survivors. The pain, the suffering, and the trauma can lead to diminished physical and also mental health, and it impacts all social interactions. But violence against children also inflicts a huge financial toll on both the victim and the societies. National studies from a wide range of countries have estimated this cost to be up to 5% of national GDPs. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about trillions of dollars worldwide. This economic burden on society is the sum of all the costs that are being incurred by the systems that are responding to violence through health, child protection, or justice. But there is also an indirect and long-term cost of lost opportunities. Violence undermines investments in children's health and education and the other social sectors, and it is reducing human capital, and it is affecting the potential earnings of the individual businesses and governments. And this doesn't even account for the perpetuation of a social model where violence continues to be accepted in human interactions and passed on to the next generation. Yet we know that investment in proven and evidence-based violence prevention programs can avert these economic costs. It also removes critical barriers to children from achieving their God-given potential. Multiple research studies demonstrate that violence prevention programs have positive returns on investment and offer benefits that far exceed their costs. The fact that many proven violence prevention interventions have a relatively low cost is making the case for investing even stronger. And yet we're missing this great opportunity to realize violence prevention dividends and to utilize violence prevention as a mechanism to further reduce poverty, to foster economic growth, and to enhance social development. Data shows that investment in violence prevention is both insufficient and staggering low as we speak. And in fact, only 1 in 4 countries have fully funded their own plans to end violence against children. And while we see a rush on investment to respond to this growing fiscal austerity and to restart economies, our evidence shows that more focus is needed to embed prevention of violence into all the child-facing services. Preventing and responding to violence against children should be an integral part of every government's economic growth and development strategy, and a cornerstone of their plans to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The growing needs demands increased and more efficient investment in ending violence against children. And it also requires strong budgeting and data systems that foster accountability and also documents impact. This stands for both the national governments as well as for the donor governments that have such a critical role to play in mitigating the impact of crises such as the crisis in Ukraine on children worldwide. And I noted at the beginning, these are unprecedented times. And while we are working hard to mitigate, to respond, and to prevent further escalation of crisis, we must also build for the future, because decisions we make today will impact generations to come. We cannot transform our societies if we allow millions of children to fall prey to violence. If COVID was not a strong enough wake-up call, the Ukraine crisis has just made it explicitly clear. It is our duty and the moral obligation of our generation, but also it's a critical investment in humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. It reminds us, it's a pity that we are repeating since many years, that we need to end violence against children. And also I think what is important is also reminding us that it's investing in children, it's not additional expenses. You know, the violence against children is a pandemic, and investing is the unique vaccine, and it's more efficient than the current vaccine on COVID. And I think this is really, really very important to remind you. Without further delay, thank you so much, Dana. I now have the pleasure, the great pleasure, to introduce Ojaswi, who is a strong child rights activist from India and advisor with the COVID under 19. And I am really happy to see you again, because you took part, you know, in my truly interactive dialogue last Saturday with children from all over the world on my annual report to the Human Rights Council. So this year I start by children first and states after. And you will share, you know, some reflection from that session to help us set the scene from your perspective. Ojaswi, you have the floor. Over to you.
Thank you, Najat. Before I begin with anything I have to say, I'd like to pay respects to refugees suffering all around the world as a result of the various crises in various regions right now. A conference like this must acknowledge the plight of millions as they face the very same violence that we are trying to put an end to. Hence, I dedicate all of my words from this moment onwards to refugee children in particular, upon whom such violence will leave a far more devastating impact than on anyone else. I pray for their peace, and all of us should do the same. Hello, everyone. My name is Ojaswi. I'm 17 and I'm from India. I'm delivering this statement with a mixture of anguish and hope for those who do not have a platform but desperately need it. I'm just one of millions of children who are overlooked and treated by the governments of our countries as invisible citizens. Even where there is democracy, it mostly excludes us. And exclusion in political elections is understandable in the case of younger children, but decisions that transcend any sort of ideology and policy, decisions concerning our own safety and well-being, lie not in our hands, but in the hands of adults whom have, on many occasions, blatantly dismissed the importance of our lives and our well-being. This isn't just an indicator of how child rights are neglected, but one of the largest sources of violence that is a reality for so many children with no dependable platforms right now. And that's why giving us children a platform is one of the biggest steps you can take towards solving the problem on the agenda of the SDGs, which is to end violence against children by 2030. That's 8 more years. You need to allow us to tell you the issues we face in order to solve them, and you need to hear it from us. During the event that I was able to moderate alongside Najat on the 12th, so many problems were brought to us by hundreds of children all over the world. These are problems adults and decision makers won't be hearing about at your regular meetings because most of us children have nobody to tell these struggles to. There's no direct pathway of communication for our struggles to reach you. This event was one of the first of its kind, and we still have only unearthed a minuscule portion of the suffering children as a whole face worldwide. To put some of it into perspective, let me tell you a little bit about what we heard at the event. A girl described how she must sell items for a living and is physically abused by adult customers when she resists lowering the already meager price of her goods, the prices she must set to provide for her family at such a young age. She asked Najat how to stop this. This problem is candid, and her voice was loud and clear for all of us to hear. And we can give her advice, tell her to seek allies, but the brutal reality of this situation is that we cannot be sure if immediate help is coming to this innocent girl at any time soon, because the knowledge and acceptance of child rights on the behalf of adults is still close to unheard of today. Another boy from my very own country, India, described the violence he and his teenage friends face regularly. As stated in our national pledge, they are my brothers. And these brothers of mine have formed a group of their own to spread awareness of child rights. But once again, we still can't be sure if the violence they face sees a near end. I hope all of you have seen a video that has gone viral on social media. It's one of the most candid images of the reality of so many children right now, right as we speak. A little boy, 4 years of age, crying while crossing the border into a neighboring country with nothing but a plastic bag of his toys and belongings. There's the case of another 11-year-old boy who made his way to another country alone, with information scrawled on his hand and a piece of paper in his passport with some contacts written down. Without his parents, he must find safety and start a new life after having to leave his family behind and see his home country decimated. Likewise, there are so many more children, vast numbers of innocent young children that if we were all to see and comprehend right before us, we would probably sink to our knees in despair. We are not just your future. We children exist now, and we are as large of a part of the present as you are. And there is no excuse for decision makers to treat us as though they are not accountable to us. As decision makers, they owe our existence some thought, some compassion, and some concern. And as we've seen, it is impossible to expect complete accountability and support, and our problems honestly cannot be solved by you alone. That's why we would like to be accountable to ourselves and to the children around us. So include us, children, in the fight for our rights and well-being, please. Along with being heard, we must also be contributed towards meaningfully. And as the reality of our society is that nothing is free, and our rights and well-being sadly cannot be safeguarded for no cost, we ask you to dedicate an appropriate part of your national budgets to our well-being based on a comprehensive understanding of the violence and struggles of children prevalent in your countries. Demographic dividend is important for the futures of your economies. Diverse human capital is necessary for your nations to grow socially, culturally, and financially. And the future of your nations rests upon us children. And if you ensure equitable, diverse investment towards children of all ethnicities, socioeconomic strata, and abilities, your nation will progress holistically rather than unidimensionally and become stronger economies as well as better places for people to live. And I must also put this forward. Budgeting for our sake does seem to be happening on paper, but on paper only. In various parts of the world, parts which do in theory set aside sizable portions of their budget and have put in place administrative organizations aimed at protecting us children, justice is still sadly almost unheard of. And that's because of the lack of importance we children are actually given, a lack of care that leads to little or no implementation of these measures to actually ensure we are protected. Resources are limited already in terms of protection and care of vulnerable children. Hence, it makes more monetary sense to improve and strengthen these centers of safety and make them accessible than it does to allow violence and violations of rights to happen and then scramble to create more space in a system that may already be faulty. For example, you'd much rather live in an earthquake-proof building than you'd live in one that isn't and then face the repercussions of loss in case of an earthquake. In the same way, children must be safeguarded, educated, and protected in an inclusive manner to prevent violence in the first place. And realistically speaking, sadly, we are far from this. A study of a certain country that many youth activists like myself reference on the status of apparent safe spaces for children, subsidized by your governments, showed that an overwhelmingly large portion of these spaces in this country lack even running water. Forget any sort of psychosocial support. These children are stripped of even basic dignity, as well as the CRC guaranteed right to adequate housing in the name of protection and support. But on paper, investment seems to be happening. Where's the gap then? Where's all this money going? I believe my silence on this issue in particular will speak louder than anything I have to say about it. But the outcome of this gap is that none of the services promised are actually benefiting vulnerable children. Please stop leaving things halfway done. I said this in the event on the 12th to all of our lovely child listeners, but I actually believe adults need to hear this far more than children do. The sources of all injustices can be tracked back to a power imbalance. And this is the case for us children too. And within this imbalanced system, we children are taught and forced to believe that our rights and well-being is secondary to everyone else's. We are made to believe that it is disrespectful to the disproportionate amount of power adults and decision makers hold to ask to be treated with kindness, dignity, and mutual respect. Our involuntary silence is perpetuated, and the perpetrators of this remain unmoved by our silent suffering. It is not disrespectful for us to ask for our rights. This statement of mine does not end with a full stop because it has no end. If anything, this statement must be the start of a long intergenerational conversation that should not only continue, but also be acted upon in truly impactful ways. We're dealing with the lives of children, and there is no amount of money or resources that can undo the damage to a child's past. Instead, please invest not just with your minds, but also with the goodness of your hearts for the sake of every vulnerable child's future. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Ojaswi. It's very difficult. I am not going to summarize. I think you are the best defender, but you highlight many, many things. And we have some policymakers here. And just to let you know that during my presentation in the Human Rights Council, I highlighted also your voices. And I just want to highlight some points that remind all the challenges faced by many children worldwide and the most vulnerable, and also your strong capacity of resilience, of reactivity, of developing initiative. You are the present, and I totally agree. And you are not our future; you are your own future. And I just want to remind the policymakers that are going to present just after, no excuse for decision makers. You can make it. You have to be accountable. It's possible to invest. And the big issue of the power imbalance, considering children, with dignity, with mutual respect, but also as key partners in the solution. And last but not the least, is children are not a problem to resolve. Children are human capital to invest on and to do it with them. So without further delay, I want to reiterate, my strong thanks and congratulations to Ojaswi. And No, we are going to move to the second part of the event, which focuses on member states' experience. And we know that many countries worldwide are doing great work on investing in this across sectoral integrated child rights-based services, to prevent and to end violence against children and accessible to all children without, discrimination. And others are planning to do so. And today we will hear about the experience of 3 countries, highlighting the important lessons that could help inform and inspire other member states in this field. I will first invite Asmundur Davson, Minister for Education and Children from Iceland, that really for me is one of the most strong ministers as child rights defender. You have the floor, Asmundur.
Thank you, Najat. It's a great honor to have the possibility to participate in this event here today, and to underline the importance of events like these, where we share information, because part of being progressive and moving forward is to share information and learn from each other. But before I start, I must say that it's hard to come after the young woman from India, Ojasvi, because her speech was actually one of the best I have heard for a long time. And what she was saying there about to us, the policymakers of the world, is very important. The children are the present, they're not just the future. And I want to just underline that is important, and tell Ojasvi that she should hold this speech everywhere she can, to every policymaker she can. My name is Asmundur Davson, and I'm Minister of Education and Children in Iceland, as was mentioned earlier. I first became a minister in 2017, then I became a Minister of Social Affairs. Shortly after I became a Minister of Social Affairs, I decided to focus almost exclusively on children, because part of being a social minister is that we are dealing with what happens if children are not, if we don't help children on early stages. And we decided to focus on children for 4 years, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. But now I'm a Minister of Education and Children, where we have everything related to children in one ministry: the social services related to children, childhood, the violence against children, child protection system, and the whole educational system from 12 months old to 20 years of age. What we did is that we linked together everyone related to children, not only the Ministry of Children, but all ministries related to children, all municipalities. We had discussions with every political party and included them in everything that we were doing, and with NGOs. And last but not least, we had a strong connection to children themselves on every step of the journey in Iceland. Because I believe that if we're going to change the system for children, we have to have the voices of children, because the children themselves are the masters of being children. Even though we often think that we know what children want and what they need, we don't, because we are not children. We know that ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, are a major factor in well-being of not only children, but when you become older, both when it comes to mental and physical things. And we also know that after COVID and during COVID, we have more adverse childhood experiences for children than we have had before. And we made here in Iceland a new legislation, or a new law, that is called the Prosperity Law. That is a law that puts the children at the heart of the agenda, that makes every sector work together to make services for children, to step in and to prevent and respond when against violence against children. Part of that is not only talking together, but we need an investment. we need to put money into the systems, into different systems. And we need to, not only do we have to do it because we know it's the right thing to do, because people that work in, for example, the social system and people that work to prevent violence against children, they know how important it is. But we have to look on it as an investment, because often those that are working in the finance ministries, in the economical sectors, they don't know what we know. And part of what we did is during the new legislation, and part of the implementation of the new legislation is to get the economist team to calculate the financial gain of the new legislation. And we hired an economist that used to be the main economist of the Icelandic Chamber of Commerce, and asked him to go through with his knowledge and his economic background to calculate how big the investment, how big the financial gain would be for the major investment that the new law was needed. And his work showed that the financial gain will slowly increase for the next years. But when the children that are children today will become on my age, then it will become one of the best investments in Icelandic society. Even so good that it's on same level as, for example, the international airport in Iceland, which is the only international airport in Iceland. And it's the best investment that you can make. And even he told us, even I can tell you that here, that if the finance ministry and the parliament wouldn't accept the funding, we could even make baby bonds and let the market invest in the social protection system. But we have to know it's a long-term investment. It's a long-term investment, and we must be patient when we work on these things. But I think we should link economics more into the welfare system and the social protection system, because as I said earlier, we know it's a human right. We know it's important to end violence, but we have to speak the same language as the finance sector does. By doing so, then we will change how the world, how each country looks on children as an investment. But we also have to increase everything when it comes to data, related to children. Because often when we talk about things that are related to children and violence against children, it's often based on a feeling, but we can't base what we are doing on a feeling. And what we are doing now in Iceland is that we are linking together in a new ministry all data related to children. We're gathering on regular basis data from municipalities, from NGOs, from different ministries, to know exactly which evidence-based approaches are working and which are not. And that is part of the implementation of the new law. I was asked to say a few things that would be important to share with other countries. First of all, I want to say that it is important that we speak that we know that different sectors don't speak the same language. People working in the social protection system, working against violence against children, we have to acknowledge that people in the financial sector, in the finance ministry, don't often speak the same language. We have to acknowledge that people in the educational system often don't speak the same language as in the social protection system. And we have to try to learn their language, because then we will move forward. Secondly, we have to work together. We have to work together, different sectors, different government and ministries, religion groups. Everyone has to try to work together, and based on learning what is the world for different sectors. Thirdly, we need political commitment. We need strong political commitment when we are changing things, and we have to support those that want to be the lead in political change when it comes to this. Number 4 is we need to look at it as a long-term investment. It's very important that we don't forget, because politics often just think in 4 years. We have to think in 10, 15, 20 years span. And number 5, we have to listen to children. We have to have them with us in the journey, because we are not specialists in being children. The children themselves are the specialists. And in the end, I would like to say that it's very important now, after COVID-19, that we focus on the topic of this meeting, to prevent violence against children, to look on it as a long-term investment, and we try to influence different political leaders, countries, NGOs, ministries, municipalities, everyone that is working towards building back better after COVID-19, to focus on children and try to change the way we think. Try to focus on it as an investment, and remember though in our hearts that it is a human right and it is the right thing to do, but we have to look on it as an investment, because we need the money to make progress. It's an honor to be with you here today, and I'm looking forward to be part of the panel later on.
Thank you, dear Asmundur. Thank you a lot. And as usual, as we are working since I arrived, and I am really always impressed by your strong commitment and this regarding so many important things that you highlighted. We have to do it for and with children, and children as key partners. And I think this is really important. Regarding also the language we are using, and I think important also to see how we can have a common language, and in our advocacy message, how we can use economic message when it's needed, depending on the targets. This is important. You told also that it's strong mobilization. It's a responsibility of government, but also changing mindset, mobilizing, and it's a long-term investment. So it's really, really important to not forget it's not linked to the elections. And we need more ministers like you, and that are not looking only for the election, but maybe that are committed. And the most important thing is really children, as part of the solution and, involved. So really many thanks for that. And without further delay, it's now my pleasure to invite Mrs. Maria do Livramento, President of the Institute of Children and Adolescents, to share also with us the experience of Cabo Verde. You have the floor, Mrs. Maria do Livramento.
Obrigada, senhora representante especial do secretário-geral da Violência contra Crianças. Muito boa tarde a todos. O governo de Cabo Verde elegeu a criança como prioridade absoluta, crescendo no seio da família, frequentando escolas em segurança, visando a construção de um futuro digno e uma sociedade mais justa e protegida. Porque Cabo Verde sabe que só investindo nas crianças poder-se-á alcançar o desenvolvimento sustentável. O país avançou muito a nível de proteção das crianças, contudo, ainda persistem violações dos seus direitos, o abandono, a negligência, conflitos familiares, a convivência com pessoas que fazem o uso abusivo do álcool e outras drogas, a violência física, sexual, psicológica e o trabalho infantil. Isto tem impacto nos direitos humanos, na coesão social, mas também no crescimento econômico e no desenvolvimento sustentável do país. Para medir o impacto da violência contra crianças, o primeiro passo é permitir que esta seja visível. A presença do Instituto Cabo-Verdiano da Criança e do Adolescente em todas as ilhas, enquanto organismo do Estado encarregue de materializar a política para a infância, tem permitido que casos de violação dos direitos das crianças sejam denunciados e dados os devidos tratamentos pelas autoridades judiciais e de proteção da criança, não permitindo que os violadores fiquem impunes. Outros, sim, contribuíram para a sensibilidade e a medição da incidência da violência sexual a recente reforma legal que culminou com a revisão do Código Penal e do Código do Processo Penal, com agravamento das penas, tornando público o crime cometido em crianças com idade inferior a 16 anos, permitindo o afastamento imediato do agressor da convivência com a criança, dando prioridade na tramitação e julgamento dos processos como sendo de natureza urgente. Tudo isso mostra o interesse do governo de Cabo Verde na eliminação deste fenômeno. Uma vez eliminada a impunidade e reforçada a visibilidade do fenômeno, medir o impacto sobre o desenvolvimento sustentável deve-se fazer à luz das prioridades do país. Para os próximos anos, estas prioridades centram essencialmente no desenvolvimento do capital humano, na erradicação da pobreza extrema, no crescimento sustentável e resiliência. A violência contra crianças afeta a sua saúde física e mental e o acesso à educação, não apenas em termos de participação, mas também em termos de aproveitamento e resultados. Ambos os direitos, saúde e educação, são centrais no processo de desenvolvimento do capital humano. Isso sem contar com o impacto da violência contra crianças no seu processo de desenvolvimento cognitivo ao longo da vida. Por conseguinte, a violência contra crianças torna mais difícil, às vezes praticamente impossível, o rompimento com o ciclo da pobreza, em particular, a pobreza extrema, porque impede atacar as suas diferentes dimensões e as suas causas mais profundas. As limitações no desenvolvimento do capital humano e na erradicação da pobreza, por sua vez, afetam o crescimento sustentável e a resiliência, pois não permitem criar as condições, em particular entre a juventude, para otimizar a empregabilidade, a produtividade, o empreendedorismo e a inovação, todos motores centrais do crescimento sustentável. Para além deste impacto profundo e de longo prazo, muitas vezes difícil de quantificar, Cabo Verde está fortemente comprometido nesta luta e a levar em conta no desenho dos seus planos e das suas políticas públicas com impactos mais diretos e mais localizados. Um exemplo disso é a prevenção da exploração sexual, especialmente nos destinos turísticos, pois o turismo tem sido o principal motor do crescimento de Cabo Verde nas últimas décadas. O país reforçou o trabalho com os operadores turísticos, hotéis, agências de viagens, guias turísticos, companhias de viagens nas Ilhas do Sal, Boa Vista e do Maio, através da adesão do Código de Conduta Mundial do Turismo contra a Exploração Sexual de Crianças em Viagens e Turismo, mostrando que o nosso país está atento e não tolera violências contra crianças, seja ela de que tipo for. De igual modo, a recente reforma legal criminaliza a exploração sexual de menores de 18 anos, pois o governo definiu tolerância zero ao abuso e à exploração sexual de crianças. São evidentes os ganhos obtidos em 2020 e 2021 na prevenção da violência contra crianças. Para além da reforma legal, considerada a mais profunda em matéria de crimes sexuais, o governo adotou o segundo Plano de Ação Nacional de Prevenção e Combate à Violência Sexual contra Crianças 2022-2024, acompanhado de uma estratégia nacional e de um plano de comunicação para a prevenção e o combate à violência sexual contra crianças, e tem vindo a envidar esforços para a criação de salas de audição de crianças, centros de dia em todas as ilhas e um centro de emergência infantil na Ilha do Sal. O governo está a trabalhar com vista à adaptação da justiça às necessidades das crianças, justiça amiga da criança, permitindo a audição da criança o mínimo de vezes possível, acompanhado por profissionais especializados, em local adequado para o efeito, com recurso a meios lúdicos, pedagógicos e tecnológicos, evitando desta forma a sua exposição e revitimização. Assim, baseado nessa experiência, o meu conselho para os outros Estados-membros basearia no seguinte: a melhor forma de lutar para que não haja violências contra crianças é a prevenção. Investir na prevenção da violência contra crianças limita a sua incidência e o seu impacto sobre as pessoas ao longo da vida, sobre a sociedade, economia e sobre o desenvolvimento do país. Cabo Verde vai continuar a investir num contexto desafiante de recuperação pós-Covid e de múltiplas crises na saúde materno-infantil, saúde sexual e reprodutiva, na educação de qualidade, inclusive no pré-escolar e no ensino básico, na habitação digna e no acesso aos serviços sociais básicos para todos os agregados familiares, na formação profissional, no emprego digno e também no sistema da justiça, para não deixar nenhuma criança para trás e para erradicar a violência contra as crianças. Todas essas medidas só serão possíveis com a parceria técnica e financeira de nossos parceiros, em especial a Unicef, enquanto principal parceiro na proteção da criança e que nos tem apoiado ao longo de vários anos. Estamos seguros de que Cabo Verde será capaz de consolidar, nos próximos meses e anos, um sistema de proteção robusto, holístico e integrado, que salvaguarda o superior interesse das crianças em coordenação com as organizações da sociedade civil e junto das comunidades e famílias para construir um futuro melhor para todas e todos, para o país e para o mundo. Muito obrigada pela vossa atenção.
Thank you, dear Maria. We were working closely with you since you were presenting the Vienna, and we were following the strong political commitment of your country at high level. I am not going to repeat all, but you highlight too many issues, the prevention, but we need to have more proactive and sustainable prevention, because we know what are the root causes, we know what are the push factors and the pull factors, and we need really to address them in a more sustainable and proactive way, including, access to quality of health, including mental health, sexual reproductive health, education since the earliest age that is inclusive, safe, empowering, living condition, social services of quality, decent employment. But to highlight one main big important issue is justice, because we can have wonderful legal frameworks that are not duly implemented because of lack of access to justice, because of corruption, because of impunity. And you highlight also the role of the private sector and public sector, and mainly in your case, tourism and travel industry, and building back better regarding tourism and travel industry in many, many countries currently have really to be reviewed, taking into account the role that could play this private sector, in a safe, resilient, economy. And so many, many, many thanks. And the last point is also when you have strong political commitment, and it is translated by mobilizing, domestic budget, but also private sector and other key partners, among them UN and other donors. Many, many thanks, Maria, for, this presentation. I had the honor, to undertake a country visit to Jordan in past December, and I learned a lot. It was a wonderful visit. Many, many meetings with policymakers, but also with children at capital level, but also at municipal and local level. And I learned a lot about, the challenges, but also the great work done. And mainly regarding this integrated child law, including all the points that was raised, by Asmundur and by Maria. And it is my pleasure to invite Ustad Mohammed Maqdadi, the Secretary General of the National Council for Family Affairs, to tell us more about the work, because it's underway. We want to assess the cost and the high return of investment. Ustad Mohammed, تفضل مشكورا.
شكرا أستاذ دكتورة نجاة، وشكرا على هذه الدعوة. يعني بعتقد من المهم الحديث من قبل المؤسسات المهتمة ومؤسسات الأمم المتحدة، ويعني بأن نرفع صوتنا تجاه قضية مهمة، وهي الاستثمار في الطفولة في جميع أنحاء العالم، وأن نحشد الدعم لأن تكون قضية الاستثمار في الطفل وفي حماية الطفل على سلم وعلى رأس أولويات السياسيين. بعتقد ليس فقط، يعني نحن نعلم بأنه السياسيين ليسوا في أحيان كثيرة تكون قضية الطفولة والاستثمار طويل المدى هي من أولوياتهم، ولكن بعتقد أن الدور الأكبر يقع على عاتق المدافعين عن حقوق الأطفال بأن يثيروا القضية من جهة، وأن يعملوا على إيجاد نماذج وبرامج وسياسات، وأيضا اقتراح تشريعات بما يعزز المصلحة الفضلى للأطفال. مفهوم الاستثمار في الطفولة، أعتقد أن جميعنا نعلم بأهمية الخدمات التي يجب أن تقدم للأطفال، وبنوعية الخدمات التي يجب أن تقدم للأطفال، وموضوع التنسيق وإيجاد برامج بين المؤسسات لحماية الطفل. ولكن بالنهاية من يقرر وضع الموازنات للاستثمار في الطفولة هم وزراء المالية والحكومات. بعتقد المطالبة فقط لا تكفي، وإنما أيضا علينا دور بأن نبذل مجهودا أكبر بأن نقترح الحلول، وأن نقترح الحلول إما من خلال التشريعات وإما من خلال السياسات، وإيجاد نماذج ريادية لحماية الأطفال. بالنسبة للأردن، وبعتقد يعني لدينا في أولا كمجلس وطني لشؤون الأسرة، والذي يقوم بدور التنسيق وحشد الدعم ورفع كفاءة العاملين، وأيضا تحليل وتطوير التشريعات ذات العلاقة بالطفل، وأيضا إعداد تقارير متابعة. ونعتقد بأن ما نقوم به من تقارير متابعة يلقي الضوء بشكل واضح على النقص أحيانا في الخدمات المقدمة للأطفال وعلى مستوى حماية الأطفال. عندما يعني كنت دكتورة نجاة في زيارة الأردن، يعني شاركتينا إطلاق دراسة العنف ضد الأطفال اللي تم يعني إعدادها بالتعاون مع منظمة اليونيسف مكتب الأردن، والتي تلقي الضوء على أهمية العمل على الحد من العنف ضد الأطفال، سواء كان في المدرسة أو في الحي أو داخل الأسرة. نقوم بدور، وهو نعتقد بأنه دور لحشد الدعم لحماية الأطفال من خلال التنسيق مع المؤسسات المختلفة. وبعتقد لدينا تجربة جيدة، وهو الفريق الوطني لحماية الأسرة من العنف. هذا الفريق الذي يقوم أولا دوره في مراقبة ومتابعة الالتزام في تطبيق التشريعات وتطبيق الإجراءات، وضمان عدم الازدواجية في البرامج والمشاريع التي تقدم للطفولة. استندت منظومتنا في التجربة منظومة حماية الأسرة والطفل في التجربة الأردنية على محاولة العمل على إيجاد برامج multidisciplinary services. عم نتكلم عن في عام 1997 تم إنشاء إدارة متخصصة لحماية الأسرة من العنف، وهذه الإدارة تقدم خدمات شرطية قانونية، خدمات صحية، وخدمات اجتماعية. الغاية بأنه يعني مراعاة للمصلحة الفضلى للطفل بأن تقدم له الخدمات في مكان واحد، تقوم على منهجية إدارة الحالة، ومنركز من خلال الوثيقة التي نعتمد عليها في عملنا في الأردن، وهي وثيقة الإطار الوطني لحماية الأسرة من العنف، والتي تقوم على 3 مبادئ أساسية: الوقاية والتدخل وإعادة التأهيل. نعتقد بأنه التطبيق الفعلي لهذه الوثيقة يقينا في المستقبل الدخول بأي مشاكل أو دخول الأطفال في مخالفة للقانون. وبالتالي كنا بنعرف بأنه الوقاية وتقديم الخدمات الأساسية عندما تكون المشاكل صغيرة نسبيا، نتقي أن يكون لدينا مجرمين في المستقبل، وأن تتفاقم المشاكل سواء تجاه الأطفال أو بين الأطفال أو من قبل الأسر تجاه أطفالهم. ما نقوم به بعتقد من المهم دائما التركيز على الجانب التشريعي وجانب السياسات. لذلك بعتقد ما نقوم فيه أو ما تم إنجازه مثل قانون الحماية من العنف الأسري، والذي استند في تطوير هذا القانون على النهج الإصلاحي والتسوية في حل النزاعات الأسرية عندما لا تكون حادة جدا. والشيء الآخر، أصدرنا قانون الأحداث، وأيضا في حاليا في طور الاندورسمنت أو المصادقة على قانون الطفل من قبل الحكومة لغايات إظهار وحشد الدعم في أهمية إصدار قانون الأحداث أو قانون حقوق الطفل. قمنا، وهذا بالتعاون كان مع منظمة اليونيسف، بدراسة لتقدير التكاليف المترتبة على هذين القانونين، والأهم ما تم تضمينه في هذين القانونين وإرساله إلى الحكومة كان ما يترتب على الاستثمار في هذين القانونين من العائد الذي سوف يعود على الشخص نفسه، الطفل نفسه في حياته المستقبلية، وأيضا على المجتمع ككل. أيضا قانون حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، واللي ركز بشكل كبير على قضية الصحة لذوي الإعاقة في سن مبكرة، وأيضا تضمن هذا القانون خلال 10 سنوات بأن لا يكون لدينا دور لذوي الإعاقة، وإنما مساعدة الأسر للتعامل مع الأطفال ذوي الإعاقة. مشروع قانون حقوق الطفل ركز على منهجية إدارة الحالة لحتى يكون لدينا أسلوب وقاية في التعامل مع العنف ضد الأطفال. أيضا ركز على قضية التعليم، وأكدنا في ما ورد في مسودة هذا القانون بأن يكون التوسع في خدمات الطفولة، التوسع في رياض الأطفال، والتوسع في الحضانات، لأنه جميعكم تعلمون بأن التعليم هو من أهم الاستثمارات في الطفولة، وتقديم الخدمات ذات النوعية جيدة للأطفال في سن مبكرة. نعتقد بأن هذا يعود بعائد كبير جدا على الأطفال وعلى المجتمع ككل. القضية الأخرى ما تضمنه مسودة قانون حقوق الطفل اللي هو قضية التسرب المدرسي. قضية التسرب المدرسي قضية مهمة جدا، والتي تفرز بالنهاية أطفال عاملين وأطفال مستغلين وما إلى ذلك. لذلك نحاول من خلال هذا القانون بأن نضبط عملية التسرب المدرسي وأن نمنعها، لأنه المكان المناسب والمكان الأفضل للأطفال أن يكونوا في مدارسهم. ولكن دائما عندما نتكلم عن التشريعات وعن السياسات والإجراءات التي توضع، دائما لدينا أكيد مشاكل في التطبيق. بعتقد الأردن كما هي حال بعض الدول، الأردن اليوم يستقبل 1.5 مليون لاجئ سوري، وهؤلاء أغلبهم كما تعلمون من الأطفال. بالتالي في ظل الموارد المحدودة للدولة الأردنية، فإن عملية الاستثمار أحيانا في خدمات الطفولة قد لا تشكل أولوية لدى السياسيين، وخاصة بنعرف أنه في دول والأردن من هذه الدول تغير السياسيين بشكل مستمر. يعني مسألة الاستثمار للعائد في المستقبل يكون صعبا وبحاجة إلى جهد أكبر. أيضا نتكلم عن بعض المشاكل اللي بتتعلق أحيانا في الازدواجية في البرامج. الأردن من الدول التي تعتمد على المنح والمساعدات في تطوير البرامج المتعلقة بالطفولة، وهذا شيء جيد يعني، ويعني نشكر مؤسسات الأمم المتحدة والمؤسسات المانحة، ولكن أيضا يجب أن نتطلع لأنه أحيانا هنالك يصبح ازدواجية في البرامج التي تنفذ على أرض الواقع، وهذا بحاجة أنه ندرسه بشكل كثير مهم وكثير جيد. الإجراءات اللي تم تطويرها في الأردن بعتقد مثل يعني أعددنا في الأردن منذ أكثر من 10 سنوات قمنا بتحليل موازنات صديقة للأطفال، وقمنا بتحليل الموازنات لمجموعة من الوزارات المختلفة، ونجحنا في أن توضع مخصصات الطفولة بشكل مستقل ضمن الموازنة العامة، وهذا يعني بعطينا يعني يمكننا من أن نقوم بمراقبة هل تصرف هذه المخصصات التي يتم رصدها في الموازنات المختلفة على الأطفال أم يتم صرفها على شيء آخر. في نهاية حديثي بحب أتكلم ولجميع المشاركين، أكيد في كل دولة يعني كل دولة مهتمة بأن تقدم الخدمات بشكل جيد وأن تحمي أطفالها، ولكن بعتقد يجب أن يعني نعمل بشكل عالمي لحماية الأطفال بشكل عام، لأنه حتى لو كان دولة واحدة تفتقر إلى تلك الخدمات المهمة وتفتقر أنظمة حماية الطفل إلى أنظمة ذات نوعية جيدة، سوف نبقى نواجه في المستقبل نواجه مشاكل تؤثر ليس على الفرد نفسه وليس داخل الدولة نفسها، وإنما أيضا بين البلدان. شكرا جزيلا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذ محمد. I am very frankly, very shortly, I know that you are doing well and facing many challenges, and I think this is important, you know, to keep it in mind, because he highlighted really they review many legislation, and I can testimony on that: the child rights law, the juvenile justice, the law on persons, you know, on rights of persons with disabilities, and they are working currently with the Unicef to have a cost assessment, but also the high return on investment. But I think what is important and what he has highlighted is first, the big problem of countries who are facing fiscal constraints and relying, you know, on donors, and this is a big issue because it's a continuity, and also the big problem of lack of coordination between UN system and, you know, donors. This, I think it's important. The other thing he was highlighting is the effective implementation. That is very difficult because it depends also on the change of ministries or priorities, and this is important. And the role of the National Council for Family Affairs is really to advocate, to provide guidance, to monitor, and also to follow what happens with the child dedicated budget, if it's used, you know, for children purpose or not. And the last point he highlights is really to be, yes, it's up to the countries to do it, but we need currently, and what is going worldwide, to take into account also the geopolitical situation. And Jordan is currently facing, since many years, a huge, flow of refugees, and among them, since 9 years, 1.5 million refugees from Syria, and including, also refugees from Palestinians. So he was telling also in our advocacy, we need to have this global, political, and regional approach. So thank you, Mohammed, for your remarks. And now I want to move to the last part of the discussion, which focus on advocating and supporting member states to increase investment in addressing violence against children and its driver. And I will give the floor to Januka Jamarkatel, 19-year-old child rights activist, young rights activist from Nepal, who has been advocating for child rights for over 6 years. And her focus is mainly on child participation, which includes child participatory budgeting and children's involvement in decision-making process. Dear Januka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nazat. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. Namaste. I'm Zanuka, a 19 years old child rights activist from Nepal. And it's my immense pleasure to be here for sharing my experiences on child participatory budgeting. Thank you for having me here. So before sharing my experiences, I feel like I need to explain a little about the history of child rights in Nepal. In 1990, September 14, Nepal rectified UNCRC. And in 1992, the first Child Rights Act was implemented by the government of Nepal. That was the starting phase of a starting journey of child rights in the country. I believe I won't be able to share everything in detail, so let me just highlight some of the important things. In 2011 AD, the government of Nepal implemented a child-friendly local governance, national strategy and planning policy for ensuring child rights in the local level. It helped in bringing uniformity, harmony, and mainstreaming the issue of child rights in the local governance process. So we can say that child-friendly local governance, CFLG, is the framework. It is the backbone for ensuring child rights, which consist of 51 indicators, including all the child rights included, which are mentioned in UNCRC. Also, the Constitution of Nepal has its clear commitment on child rights, including child rights in Article 39 with 10 sub-articles and under fundamental rights. So the child-friendly local government's concept by the government of Nepal, it has a basic concept, and I think this is something new in the country, in Asia, let's say. I don't know about other countries, but the government of Nepal, there are 753 local bodies in the country. And according to the Local Government Operation Act, every local body must ensure local governments as a child-friendly place, child-friendly area. They must declare it that way. And in doing so, there are 51 indicators, as I mentioned earlier. All the 51 indicators must be fulfilled. So I think we can say it as a framework for child rights in the country. And moving towards child participation and child participatory budgeting, the main idea, the main mechanism of child participation in the country is the mobilization of child club. And child club are formed under the umbrella of child club guidelines implemented by the government itself. And child club have the practice of conducting child conference every year before the local government finalize its upcoming fiscal year plan. And during the child conference, children from the area, from the local governments, they conduct in such a way that they discuss all the issues that they are facing, their problems. They discuss about what they want from their government. They discuss about all these sorts of things, and they make action plan. They finalize their action plan from the perspective of children. And then their action plan is then taken to the local government, and children themselves take part in the decision making process with the local government. I mean, they be the part of discussion with the local government when the plans and budget is formulated for the fiscal year. And this way, government finalizes the plans, including all the demands from the children, and the budget is allocated accordingly. And local government is also responsible for allocating budget for the proper management of child club, which make the activities of child club seems to be very systematic, and which also helps in decision making. Children understand the process of budgeting. So in Nepal, children are directly involved in decision making process, directly involved during the planning and budget formulation process, which helps them understand the situation of the country, And the thing is, children themselves can understand their problem, because the one who faces understand a way far more better than anyone. So including children in budgeting is one of the best practices here in Nepal. And talking about my experience, talking about myself, I, as a part of Child Club, was involved in this process from 2015 to 2021 for 6 years. And I really had a good experience. This is not only the experience of mine, but it is the experience of all the children here in Nepal who are involved in child clubs. And just to inform you all, in Nepal, as I already said, there are 753 local bodies. All the local labels are with child club. There are more than 1,000 child club, I think. Many children are involved in child clubs, and every local level is responsible for ensuring the rights of child, for protecting child club, for ensuring the participation of children in budgeting process. So there is a direct involvement of children in this process. But yeah, every field have challenges, and even we do face lots of challenges. uh, when we talk about budgeting, child participatory budgeting, yeah, of course, there is a strong base in Nepal for child participation, but there are lots of challenges that needs to be addressed. Even I faced lots of challenges. So some of the challenges I can share, for example, leaders who are politicians, they really don't consider our interest. They don't consider the interest of children, which is why children feel politically disengaged, though they are involved in the budgeting process. Another thing is a lack of intergenerational consolation, because of which adults are not able to understand the problem of children, and a minimum budget is allocated for the sector of children. And another thing, the most important challenge, the most challenging thing is implementation. uh, I already said there is a good practice in Nepal, but implementation is really very poor. The thing is like just for formality. We are involved, we are strongly involved, our voices are heard, but it is just in paper, limited in paper, just a formality, which is why ensuring child right has become a challenge in spite of having such good rules and regulations, such good acts and policies, guidelines. There are enough things, enough rules, policies, acts, guidelines in Nepal, but because of all these type of challenges where adults don't try to understand what we want, where children are being ignored, where their voices are heard just for formality, just for paper, we are being backward. And from this platform, I, as a part of child club, as a child club graduate, and as a child right activist, I want to request to all the world leaders, to all the participants, to everyone who are listening to me, to the policymakers, that child participation can really bring a better future. Child participation in every field is important. So I request everyone to prioritize child rights, child participation in each and every work, each and everything where children's voice are necessary, because only experiences, as child participant, I'm confidently talking here, I'm confidently sharing my experiences. This is the result of being involved in child participation during budgeting, during decision making. So child participation can be very helpful in the coming future. I request everyone, and thank you so much for hearing to me, and I hope I was able to meet your expectations. So thank you so much. Over to you, Nazat.
Januka, I think it's up to us and maybe the policymaker to meet your expectation, because I am not going to summarize because you raised the main problem of challenges, that it has not to be an exhibit show, but really a systematic way to work and to involve them. Now I am giving the floor to Cornelius, Director of Child Protection for Unicef. And you know that Unicef is really doing a huge amount of work to support member states in investing in integrated services regarding the cost effectiveness, but also in evidence-based action to address it. Cornelius, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Special Representative, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, participants, and also actually the two child rights activists actually who have enjoyed as they speak and bring particularly light and the practicalities of the issues on budgeting for children. We are delighted to participate in this important event, and a warm congratulations to the Special Representative for her annual report. We in UNICEF, we share the Special Representative's concern that COVID-19 pandemic has set back efforts to end all forms of violence against children, thus undermining the achievement of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. UNICEF monitoring has shown how essential violence prevention and response services were disrupted at the height of the pandemic, compromising the protection of over 1.8 billion children. COVID-19's impact is also seen through increases in child abuse-related injuries and increases in family violence over the last 2 years. Based on this experience, we joined the Special Representative in our urgent call for investment in strengthening and integrated services for children and their caregivers across all relevant sectors. Such investments are a legal and moral imperative, as we've heard from previous speakers, including the two child rights activists. They also make economic sense, as the minister from Iceland has said. As discussed today, scaling up proven violence prevention intervention can avert the economic cost of violence. It can also remove a critical barrier to children realizing their rights to health, education, and development. It has been fascinating to hear the experience of member state representatives in building this investment case. UNICEF has been pleased to support this work in many countries. Our work with governments seeks to achieve the best possible use of public budgets. This includes the use of public financial analysis, capacity building advocacy. This work aims to ensure public funding is adequate, efficient, effective, equitable, and transparent. We refer to this as Public Finance for Children, PF4C, engagement. This is a whole of agency approach that leverages our public finance and economic expertise from social policy teams together with our expertise in social sector policy and programming, such as in child protection. This area of work has become even more important as countries recover from the fiscal impact of COVID-19. Government face pressures to reduce their budget, seek greater efficiency and impact in public spending. UNICEF has supported a range of P4C initiatives worldwide. For example, Nigeria is an interesting example to share. After the first National Prevalence Survey on Violence Against Children, the country conducted a study on the economic burden of violence against children, along with financial benchmarking of government expenditure on protection of services. The benchmarking provided the first ever baseline assessment of child protection expenditure in the country. This work helped lay the foundation for measuring future progress in child protection expenditure. It also identified gaps and areas where key government priorities remain unfunded. UNICEF also worked with the government to cost different models of prevention and responsive child protection services. This enabled clear recommendations for high impact and high priority investment. This evidence-based supported strong budget advocacy and the government decision to increase investment in child protection. We have done this complete financial benchmarking for child protection in Indonesia and Cote d'Ivoire, and are happy to share the methodologies. We've also done a lighter form of budget analysis in several other countries, including Angola, Burundi, Malawi, Mongolia, and Uganda. This analysis is usually followed by evidence-based advocacy to support government to better incorporate child protection in their budgets. This particular analysis also aligns with state party commitments under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Committee on the Rights of the Child is explicit that resource constraints cannot provide a justification for a state party's failure to take any or enough of the measures that are required for child protection. We know that even a modest increase in government spending on services to prevent and respond to violence against children could make a substantial difference. A relatively small increase in allocation would significantly improve the scale and availability of child protection services, and it would and will contribute towards realizing the violence prevention dividends that the activists spoke about. Thank you very much.
We arrive at the end and we are really running very late. So I saw the question you asked and were a few. One is how we can leverage private financing. Also the question about Ministry of Finance, convince them, and because we have many Ministry of Social Affairs who are dealing with this issue. And also many questions was more about strengthening, you know, the partnership with civil society, sharing promising practices, coalition, and also access to funding. So we are not going to respond to this question, but I think many things we saw example regarding private sector within Cabo Verde, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Social Affairs. We see it within Iceland. And I think I am not going to take a lot of time. And Ojaswi, I will give you the floor for 1 minute for concluding, you know, remark and taking into account your recommendation. Over to you, Ojaswi.
Thank you, Najat. 1 minute is, okay, I'll just start then. I really appreciate all of the policies that Iceland has in place to contribute towards the well-being of children. And I really appreciate how Mr. Asmundur spoke about how we must speak the language of others to get the job done and make sure that everybody understands what we're saying, because times are changing and this is not an issue that has been focused on in the past. It is now, and we're taking steps in the right direction. Hence, we must adapt and convince others in their own languages. I was equally impressed by Cabo Verde's measures, and they're definitely steps in the right direction. And we do need to be more proactive in our action and in the implementation of measures for safety. I'm really glad with how things are turning out there. And thank you so much for everything that you've said. I would also like to thank Jordan for placing a focus on child welfare through their administrative, social, and health services. Their commitment in ensuring appropriate legislation towards rights and child safety is commendable. Janica is an incredible friend, activist, a mentor of mine who's been involved in upholding child rights. And I think her experience is so valuable because her experience is an example of the gap between investment and implementation, which is the biggest issue in the inaccessibility of justice for children today. I hope all UN member states around the world will be inspired by the progress of these countries in ensuring children are not left behind. And like I mentioned before, we are not just your future, we are also the present, and hence we must all build back together through intergenerational collaboration. As for all the children here who are watching, we do have something called a campaign toolkit that can be found on Titus Home's website, which can help you out with finding your voice. Thank you so much, everyone, the viewers. Thank you to the Office of the Special Representative. Thank you, Lucha, Manus. Thank you, COVID under 19. Thank you, Najat, for creating a platform for children like myself. And I hope many more will exist in years to come. Thank you so much. I hope that was under 1 minute.
Thank you a lot, Ojaswi. If you allow me, Ojaswi, as we have Mr. Asmundur, Maria, and Mohamed Mekdadi, if you could react to really the conclusion of Ojaswi, but in 3-5 words. Sorry for you. Asmundur.
Ekki bara segja eitthvað almennt eða? Getur unmutað? Thank you. Yes, I totally agree with Ojaswi. It's what I think is good to the panel here is that we have it from different spectrums. We have the same view from different spectrum, focusing on the same thing. And what I say is, because I say to the staff of my ministry often, you don't have to stop being an activist, even though you're working for the government. And what I think is, what I learned from this panel here is that the activist thinking, when it comes to working against violence against children, is actually the language that is spoken in a different sector, which is the finance ministry. We have to link together the activism and the voices of children, including the economist economic view, and by doing so, I think we will make a big progress.
Thank you a lot, Asmundur. We need activists in governments. I'm not sure that many governments will appreciate, but it's I totally agree. Very shortly, Maria, 2-3 words, please. I'm sorry. Over to you.
Muito obrigada. Simplesmente para dizer que nós temos que realmente investir em crianças se queremos um futuro melhor e que os governos devem fazer que haja participação ativa das crianças em todas as situações. Muito obrigada, foi um prazer estar aqui hoje.
Thank you. Thank you. أستاذ محمد مقدادي خفيف وظريف جملة مفيدة.
شكرا دكتورة نجاة. فقط أقترح بأن يكون من قبل الأمم المتحدة ورقة ملحق باتفاقية حقوق الطفل، ورقة just one sheet تتكلم عن أهمية الاستثمار في الطفولة. شكرا.
شكرا. Cornelius. Are you still here? No. Okay, so I just want to tell you many thanks to all of you, many thanks to really being here. And you know, I think it's only a beginning of process because we need to continue to invest, to mobilize, to really raise our voice, channel all that, building bridges between the countries, south, 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 north, north, south. And I think if we want really to move forward, we need to build it on it. It's not a one shot. It's really, and it's my commitment to build these bridges and to continue working closely with all of you. Many, many thanks, and mainly to all of you. And Ojaswi, you are a wonderful, you know, child rights activist. And you know, when I heard you, when I heard Januka, I feel more optimistic, and it's wonderful because we have child rights activists and we have governmental person activists. Many thanks to all of you. Many, many thanks.